Hi.
I'm so glad we could talk today, chat about weddings and all of the things that have been happening over the pandemic with weddings specifically. Um, I know that you wrote a book over the pandemic in regards to micro weddings more so. So with micro weddings, what are the keys? What are the keys to a successful micro wedding, and even moving forward as we're kind of moving towards more, bigger weddings technically, how can we use some of those micro wedding tips towards those weddings as well?
Well, I think a lot of people don't realize that micro weddings were actually trending prior to the pandemic.
Yes.
Basically around 2017, there was a big push for it's kind of like the transition in the wedding industry where more and more people were doing these large personalization type things for their weddings, like
Mhm.
escort card displays that were not just cards and not just
Mhm.
flowers. They were big signs, very much leaning towards a personalization, more of like a branding of your wedding
Yes.
personally.
Yeah.
And with that comes a price tag. And
For
so,
sure.
um, but a lot of people are like, look, I have $50,000, just to give that as an example. Across
Mhm.
the United States, most of the weddings in 2017, 2018 were in the $38,000 to $40,000 range on average. But in the
Mhm.
DC area in particular, where we are right now, it was closer to 45 to 50 just because of the cost of living and where we are real estate wise. And
Yeah.
so when someone is sitting there like, wow, I'm going to spend $50,000 on 8 hours of my life, I want to make sure that it's meaningful and makes the
For
most
sure.
sense for who I am as an individual and as a couple and as my family coming together. And people
Mhm.
started to realize, like, wow, I'm spending $50,000 and not getting the food that I want, kind of,
Mhm.
cutting back on flowers, getting kind of a okay photographer, not the photographer that I want. When in
Mhm.
reality, they start to think, maybe I don't need all my coworkers to come to my wedding because are they going to be by my
Yes.
side 20 years from
Yes.
now?
Yeah.
I think that's the big thing that people started to see is like my wedding day is about me. It's about
Yeah.
my fiance. It's not about, it is about having the party and celebrating, but it's not about entertaining everybody else and making sure everyone else is comfortable
Mhm.
because this is your day. And so I think in 2018, when the term micro wedding started to be coined by the wedding
Yes.
industry, it started to becoming part of like the blogs and social media and
Mhm.
everywhere on Pinterest. People started saying, "Wow, I can really have the wedding of my dreams at the
Mhm.
budget I'm at." So if there was this
Yeah.
big um, education of what micro weddings is and what they are
Mhm.
not
Mhm.
during the pandemic. Like micro weddings are not quote unquote budget weddings. They
Yeah.
are basically smaller, meaningful weddings within
Mhm.
whatever budget you have.
What I love about the book is that it's like really a step by step. It's like how to tell your family and friends and other people, because that is such a huge thing. Like, because you want to make it, because one thing I do love about micro weddings, or just smaller weddings in general, is that you can make it so personal. You can
Yeah.
thinking about like realigning what are your priorities. It's not guest count anymore. It's like let's make a really beautiful, catering moment where we have, a multi-course meal with wine pairings, and it's at this beautiful family style table. So it's like, when I walk through the Reagan building, I always think of other opportunities to utilize our space for things that are a little bit smaller, along with our bigger weddings, like our outdoor plaza. Beautiful place to have
Absolutely.
or farm table kind of vibe with a beautiful wine dinner. So, I think that there's so many things and so many opportunities for creativity with having a smaller wedding as well.
Well, especially at the Ronald Reagan building, like, and I've been doing events there since like the first year that it was open. I've been doing it
Yes.
for 23 years. I was there at the
Yeah.
first event. And
Yes.
so over the years, and I know that we have a brand new chef, and I met him, and he's
Yes.
fantastic. The food is
Always
fantastic.
wonderful.
But one of the biggest things about the Ronald Reagan building is that it's all about personalization menu. And this was happening way before the pandemic. I mean,
Yes.
Indian weddings and any type of culture, your
Mhm.
staff knows how to produce, which is always a
Yes,
concern for people that are trying
for
to
sure. Yeah.
personalize their weddings. And so you do have smaller spaces. You do have the capacity from a cuisine style and all types of, your wine director and everything that goes along with your beverages. And now we also have a huge part of the industry where there's a sober curiosity thing going on. And
Yes.
mocktails are a huge part of the wedding industry right now. And
Yes.
your staff does a tremendous job of not just creating a menu that includes the beverages, includes the hors d'oeuvres, and your pastry chef is amazing. It's just a full package. And so when
Yes.
people come into the Ronald Reagan building, from my perspective as a planner, I'm like, you're going to be able to get what you want. It's just a matter of the space that you want to have it in, because you have really small spaces and then you have the atrium space.
Yes.
It's kind of all over the place, but that's great. It gives people options. And that's really what micro weddings are about. And I try to reiterate this throughout the book, is that even on the cover of the book, you can even say, it says everything you've dreamed of on a smaller scale, but it's played a small and meaningful wedding.
Yes.
So
meaningful.
As you know, this year, we're supposed to have a record-breaking amount of weddings.
Yes. From New York Times article I read, it's 2.5 million weddings, which is like the most since 1984.
Yeah. And they think it could be higher. Because you've got a lot of people that are not talking about or registering their marriage license because they're having a second wedding because they got married during the pandemic.
Yes.
So statistically, it's going to be very difficult for us to gauge that. But just to give you an idea, as a wedding planner and as a floral designer, pre 2020 average, we would get about, I don't know, maybe like 30% of our bookings before the turn of the year. So like in 2019, I had maybe 30% of my weddings booked at the end of 2018. At the end of 2021, I had 65% of my dates booked.
Oh, wow.
So, and that's just unheard of.
Yes.
And so, it's a good thing from a business perspective, because 2020 was super sucky and small businesses in the hospitality industry were crushed. And so now it's at the total opposite end of the spectrum, where we're crushed and not having, supply and not having staffing and all of the things that go along with all of a sudden everyone's pent up demand.
Yes. Because now we have to get back ready for business, because because 2022 is going to be such a busy year. And then even going into 2023, I do know various couples that are still nervous about 2022. So pushing to 2023. So we're going to see even that booking of 2023. There's not going to be as much availability out there if you do wait till later in the year.
We already have weddings booked for 2023 and people talking to us about 2024. I will say that it is an issue, because we don't like to plan more than a year and a half in advance, just because trends change and life changes, things like that. I can't guarantee certain amounts of staffing at any particular point in time more than a year and a half in advance. So during the pandemic, I think what really helped the wedding industry, and we couldn't see it because we were in the middle of it and we were like, oh my God, what are we going to do?
We were freaking out.
Yeah, we were totally freaking out. But what I think it really did, and most people will agree with this, it helped people to really take stock and appreciate people in the event industry for the things that we do behind the scenes, because a lot of people just took event professionals for granted. Like, oh yeah, they're going to give us some flowers, it's going to be pretty, we're going to have some pretty food. But now people are like, wow, we really missed having a party, and we really appreciate the time that you've put into it. And so it really helps people understand the value of what we do, that we are creating, especially when it comes to weddings in particular, not so much with corporate. And it does happen with corporate sometimes, but with weddings, you are creating 8 hours of someone's life that they will most likely never forget. And
it's the most important day in so many people's lives. And so it's, you definitely, because it becomes like an emotional attachment for you as well. You're doing this, doing this for them. And I think that's why it's so important, that meaningful part of your, with your book. It's so important because it is such a meaningful day.
And so when you're talking about trends in terms of 2022, and when it's not just micro weddings, but takes a tip
Mhm.
from micro weddings, is the personality and the branding aspect of micro weddings, where you really get to personalize and make things meaningful. Like you can
Yeah.
have a wedding of 600 people in the atrium, or, I don't know, 50 people in the horizon room,
Yeah.
where,
Yeah.
you can still have the same type of food. You can
Mhm.
still have the same type of decor. It's just a
Mhm.
matter of the number of people there. And I think
Yeah.
what happens with the meaningfulness with personalization is like, wow, they had the Ronald Reagan building and like make their grandmother's chocolate chip cookies, you
Yeah.
know, and you
Yeah,
guys have done that.
absolutely.
You've done that for one of my
Absolutely.
clients. And so
Yes.
not a lot of venues can say that they do that. I mean, the amount of personalization and flexibility that the Ronald Reagan building has had way before the pandemic and before
Yes.
micro weddings were even invented.
Mhm.
It's really important for people and clients to understand that you
Mhm.
can ask your vendors to do things personally and not be like, well, I don't
Yes.
think they'll do that. There's no questions that should not be asked to any of your
Absolutely.
vendors to make that day as personal as possible,
Mhm.
because you don't get that day back.
Yeah. And and those priorities are important whenever you're going through that planning process for sure.
Yeah. And
So,
I think another thing that's been really great with micro weddings, even from back in 2016, 2017, when we started to see in our repertoire of weddings where people were like, we just want to have more of a party vibe. Like that
yes.
is
Oh yeah, we definitely have
definitely
a lot of those. And even like now that we are in a space where people are feeling more comfortable and wanting to do those bigger weddings, most of them are they want to have it as a party. They want stations, they want they
organic feel.
open the open bar and dance floor
Right.
and lounge seating. So like that's actually a lot of what we're getting for 2022, 2023 are those kind of requests. And like we were talking about, we're happy to accommodate and create a menu and create an experience, because also it's like it's a experience based. People want that experience now. They don't want to just like the run of the mill plated dinner. They want something a little bit more interesting.
Yeah, I think gone are the days are the steak and potatoes and the
Yes.
veggie. Like I
Yes.
think right now we're in like a real health craze. I think
Mhm.
people are like, you know what? I want to have a party that's going to have fantastic and beautiful looking food, but I want to make sure that it's also healthy and
Yeah.
have a few decadent options. We had a tasting recently where a couple was like, my whole family is from the South and they're really into
Mhm.
that kind of like comfort, shrimp and grits type feel. But you
Yeah.
know what? They're coming to the DC area. They're gonna have, what they're gonna do? We're gonna do like the tuna tartare, and we're gonna
Yeah.
do the
Mix it up.
upgraded. Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, go with the food that you like, no matter
Mhm.
where your guests are coming from, because
Yes.
they're going to eat whatever they like on their own on an everyday basis. People go
Yes.
to weddings to like be like, this is going to be cool. I totally know Annette and we're going to have some really good beer. Like,
Yes. Yes. I mean,
you know,
honestly, when I think about, thinking about my wedding, like it was smaller, I guess. Like we were around like
yeah, totally.
we had an all like Oktoberfest menu. Like we definitely did something that was more along the lines of like a micro wedding that it was about our priorities. We wanted to have something that was very unique.
That's really the
Yeah.
key at any type of wedding, especially at a micro wedding, when you're having these
Yes.
kind of organic kind of stations and not like a seated kind of stuffy meal. I think
Mhm.
right now, because people are like, you know what, we have been in our houses for 2.5 years, and some of us
Yes.
still are. We just want to
Yes.
party. We want to try new things. We want to meet new
Mhm.
people and keep it safe. And that's another thing with these organic types of spaces where you can kind of move people around, is like
Yeah.
you can have spaces where people feel comfortable if there are some vaccine hesitancy, or
Mhm.
just I'm afraid of COVID still, because that's going to go on for a couple of years. I really
Yes.
guarantee it. Looking at
Yes.
history and looking at the socialization of diseases, is that
Mhm.
some people are gonna be like, yeah, whatever, I'm free, and then other people are like, oh my God, COVID, we're never going to get rid of it. Just like we've never
Yeah.
gotten rid of the flu.
Yes.
So I think as planners, we need to be really sensitive to that. And as
Mhm.
a bride or a groom, or two brides or two grooms, you need to understand that not everyone's going to have the same comfort level as you. And
Yeah.
so micro weddings really do a great job of being able to handle that, because if you have 150 people, you're not
Mhm.
going to know 100% what their kind of take is on that.
Yeah.
Whereas with a micro wedding, like, oh my gosh, Aunt Susie, she's going to wear a mask the whole time. Or,
Yeah.
Joe, he's not even going to wear a mask and he's going to be like licking everybody in the
Yeah.
face, like
Yeah.
really crazy stuff like that. The
But it's
personality.
always, yeah, but it's always good, I think, to be aware of that, and then also make your planner, your venue, aware, or your caterer aware of that, because we've had instances where this year where somebody didn't want to eat in the room with everybody else. They wanted to eat outside, and we were happy to accommodate. We put a table in another room for them, and it was in the pavilion room, which has a bunch of little auxiliary spaces, so it was very easy for us. And even with our, the atrium can hold up to 500 people, but we're doing weddings in there for 125, just to allow for some of that social distancing and to make people feel comfortable.
Yeah.
And we're
And
happy to be
that's amazing.
creative. Yeah, we're happy to be
really, it's really about making people feel comfortable. And the other thing, which please, if everyone is listening, brides in particular, you
Yes.
don't have to wear the white dress anymore. Like,
Oh,
it's
100%.
what we've been seeing is, like, we had so many weddings this year where people had one woman wear a black dress, one wore this like beautiful with just flowers all over it, and one was like one was an elopement where she had like a little kind of like 50s style like tea lake dress, and it was adorable. Like, have some personality with your clothing. And I talk about that in the book, not just for brides, but also for grooms, and then also for our LGBTQIA guests and people that are also, if you're a bride or a groom and you're queer, like, you wear what you want, like, don't worry about it. I usually think with my LGBTQIA, they don't care anywhere anyway, which they kind of like, go
you don't
with
need
it.
to tell me that at all.
But I think sometimes, though, when you have ultra conservative people in the DC area, because we are conservative, not in the sense of politics, but conservative in like, I don't want to like
the traditional
offend anybody. But don't worry about that. I want people to realize, like, you can wear whatever you want.
You can break the traditions.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of people are starting to move towards that. And, I definitely see it more so than I used to, with people breaking traditions, doing something that's very unique to them, from like doing different ceremonies, or having, wearing something that's not a dress, or wearing something color, just doing something that's so on with their personality and who they are. And
also comfort level.
Yes.
Like, I don't like wearing dresses. I don't like wearing dresses. We had several brides last year that wore pantsuits and they look hot. Like, I'm just like, I get it. I'm just saying, like, I think now people are starting to see a wedding day should be about the two of you as a couple, and then bringing the guests into the fold. And so there's like 20 million ways to do that, right? And gone are the days of dumb favors. I could not be happier.
No more dropping favors on tables or a big table somewhere. I will say there's a lot of waste. There's a lot of waste in regards to favors, that most people leave them on the table, or they take them back to the hotel room and then they get thrown out by housekeeping.
And that really forays into one of the biggest parts of my book, which that I'm all about, is sustainability. Like, I am a sustainable eco flower child. Like, on my property, I have my own zero waste workshop. We compost, we reuse. After weddings, we take flowers to a government subsidized housing facility. And we used to take them to nursing homes, but with COVID, we're not quite back at that. Other thing that I don't think people really know is that the Ronald Reagan building is also really into sustainability. And the food and where they source their food from. I think people just don't ask the right questions. And that's one thing I'm really talking about a lot in my book, but also in my interviews and on my TikTok and my Instagram live and my floral arranging. Like, you need to know where your things are coming from. Like, we don't buy flowers from our distributor if they're not coming from particular countries. Like the US, Canada, Holland, and New Zealand are the 4 countries that have the most sustainable flowers. But in terms of food, a lot of people don't understand that as far as food, energy, and waste, you want to make
Yeah.
sure that your food is being sourced within 500 miles. And
Yes.
your staff is very in tune with that and wanting to get local
Mhm.
purveyors and getting really interesting things in an interesting mix. Now,
Yes.
obviously, if you were having a Japanese event, we want to bring in Japanese pears. That's another thing. But it
Yes.
all goes back to the personalization of things. And I
Mhm.
think one thing about the global warming issue and
Mhm.
sustainability is that we have to create a balance of doing one thing at a time.
Yes.
And one thing at a time is, one, get rid of those nasty favors that just have paper and packaging that make no
Yes.
sense.
Yes. And just
But
general waste. Yes.
yeah. And I think one thing that my client is doing, we were at the tasting last week at the Ronald Reagan building because we
Yeah.
are in DC, and cherry blossoms are like
Oh
our
yeah.
thing. And
Hmm.
their wedding is in April. So that's like cherry blossom bonanza time of year. They might be
Yes.
fallen by then. We have no idea. We won't
Oh
know
yeah,
for
it's
4
always a
weeks from
thing.
the
Yes.
the cherry blossom people, but the cherry blossom god people is what I call them.
Yeah.
But that instead of a regular favor, what she's doing, and by the way, she's having 250 guests. This is not a micro
Hmm.
wedding. She's
Yeah.
literally going to be writing on a postcard that has cherry blossoms, a nice personal note to each individual person.
Oh wow.
Yeah, a lot of work, but it's
Yes.
also goes back to that
Super
fine end
personal.
of like meaningfulness and
Yes.
personalization and something that makes sense. Like first of all, the postcards she bought, there's nothing that's personal about the postcards except for that it's DC. It says Washington DC, and there'll be like beautiful cherry blossoms. But you
Yeah.
can take that card as a guest and be like, that was like the sweetest thing that I've ever had at a wedding.
Yes. It's so
And then you
unique.
put it
I've
on
never
your
received something like that. Yeah.
yeah, and then you would keep that, like you would put on your refrigerator because the cherry blossoms are the most beautiful
Yes.
ever, right? So
Yeah.
I think that's the way that people need to think about their weddings in terms of
Mhm.
personalization, and just when you're planning and talking about hiring a planner or
Mhm.
any of your vendors, is that you want to make sure that you tell them your ethos of your wedding before you start,
Yes.
whether it's a micro wedding or a wedding of 500. Like,
Hmm.
just because you're having 50 people or 500 people doesn't mean that it's not going to be meaningful. Like, it just
Yes.
needs to be um, something that is communicated. And I think a lot of people
Hmm.
don't know how to communicate with their vendors. And I really
Sure.
talk about that in the book. Just tell
Yeah.
your vendors what you want. And if they
Yes.
can't do it, keep it moving. Like,
Yes.
there's someone else that will,
Yes.
so we're just a big proponent of letting our clients be themselves and
Hmm.
let them shine the day of the
Yes.
wedding. So
Yes. I mean, I love that. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I guess in like kind of like closing things out, I guess my one last thing is a couple just got engaged. What is like your first tip to give them with their starting of their planning?
is to set the tone right up front with their
Yeah.
families.
Yes.
I think the reason why people stress so much during the wedding planning process is that they want to make everybody happy. And
Yes.
a lot of people, especially, and this is a complete generalization, but it's rang true 80 to 95% of the time, just because I've been doing this for 23 years. I'm just saying,
Yes.
speaking from experience. Um,
Yes.
the majority of people that hire me as wedding planners are type A personalities, just like me.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
They're people that want things to go well. They're planners and not
Mhm.
necessarily wedding planners. They're planning people in life. They work for consulting the groups, or they're
Mhm.
lawyers, or they're actual event planners, or they're people that just like to entertain and want to
Yes.
make sure that an event goes smoothly. And so they're going to hire someone who is a planner to make that stuff come to fruition. And those
Yes.
type of people like you and I we're people
Mhm.
pleasers. There's no way
Yes.
around it. We're empaths. We think about what people are going to be thinking the day of the wedding. So as
Yes.
a bride or a groom, or two brides, two grooms, you need to kind of take a step back and be like, okay, I am not the planner of
Mhm.
this. I am the person actually getting married that day. And
Mhm.
this is going to be my memories, those pictures on the walls and those memories. And I need to put down my stamp before we start going in this ride of wedding planning. Like,
Yes.
mom, dad's moms, whatever it may be. Maybe it's your grandmother who took you in when you were 5, and that's your mom, right?
Mhm.
Whoever is going to be the person spending the most money on your wedding, the person that's going to give you the most heartache at your wedding, you already know who that is if you think about it right now. You need
Yes.
to lay down the line from the beginning. Like, this is what's going to happen. And I know
Yes.
that you might be uncomfortable about it, but
Mhm.
this is what I want for my wedding, and I hope you can really understand. And I think if you set the tone in a nice way, not like, I'm not going to do what you want me to do, mom. Like, that's
Yeah.
not going to work. Don't go
Yeah.
that route.
Don't be not aggressive and
Yeah,
just nice, straightforward.
like, this is about us and our love, and we
Yes.
want you to come along with us in that vein. And in
Yes.
the book, if you read the book, it talks about
Mhm.
you need to be okay if that person doesn't agree with you, and if you have to pay for it yourself.
Yes.
It's an issue, and you have to
Yeah.
make those decisions, and that right there will make and break the stress of the planning process. Because
Yes.
at that point, if they're like, you know what, okay, Annette, we want to do what you want to do because we love you. Boom, planning
Yeah.
is like on fire at that point. It's like, yep,
Yes.
we're gonna have the
Yes.
artichoke salad, and we're gonna
Oh, yeah.
have a chocolate cake and like milkshakes. Okay, let's do it. So
Yes.
it's not like, well, I don't think my mom's gonna be really happy with a milkshake at the wedding.
Yeah.
Don't go that route. Just go with, this is how we're going to go. And that's my biggest advice, whether you're having a
Yes.
micro wedding or a wedding of 1,000 or
Yes.
4 weddings, whatever it may be. The stress is just not worth it.
Yes.
It's just not worth it. So that's my biggest
Yeah.
advice when it comes to a micro wedding. The undercurrent is always just do you. Do
Yes. Do
So,
you
yeah.
all day. It's
And basically you should just do that anyway, right?
yes, all day, every day, 365. There we go.
100. So yeah. And you and I are like
Yes.
that. Like, let's just
Yes.
keep it moving and keep it
Yes.
good and make
Keep
sure
it-
that we're taking care of ourselves and the people around us.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely. Well,
thanks
Katie,
so much
thank
for
you
having
so
me.
much. Of course.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me. And I'm so happy to have you in my life and as my partner in weddings over.
Yes.
So, please, please be safe out there and take care.
Yep. Triple vaccinated and masked up.
Yes,
So
ready to go.
ready to go for any event, anytime.